All right, welcome everybody. This is one of the Haverford talks that we're doing during these unusual times. We want to thank Grant Ament, class 2015, for joining us for a little Q&A session. And I want to mention real quickly before we get going that this entire recording and interview is going to be available on all of our Haverford Alumni social media channels, as well as, most importantly, the brand new, or newer rather, Haverford Alumni networking platform called Graduate. If you have not signed up and you're an alum, I highly encourage you to do so. It is a phenomenal tool for reconnecting with classmates, reaching out to prospective mentors and mentees. It's just a phenomenal tool all around to get to know your Haverford community better, reach out and reconnect with your classmates, and share what's going on in your life, should you be so inclined. So with that set aside, enough of me talking, let's get into it. Grant, I think a very appropriate way to start is, how are you, where are you, and what's been keeping you busy through these last unusual 11 months?
Yeah, first, thank you for having me, Thomas, and big shout out to Andrew Bailey for setting this up. Yeah, so I'm in Philadelphia right now. I graduated from Penn State in May, and really just lived at my parents' house until November, and then moved out. But right now, my training for lacrosse is starting to ramp up a little bit. But a lot of the things that I'm doing right now are really just trying to prepare myself for the season, which we just got announced that June 4th will be our first weekend of playing, and the hope is that we'll be able to have fans this year, which was a little weird. Not necessarily for me last year, because there weren't little kids in the stand. It was more like my parents couldn't come to the game and all that stuff. And for anybody who's on the call who knew me in high school, they knew my parents really didn't miss much, and that continued on in college. So obviously training is the first and foremost thing, and then continuing to try to learn and network along the way. And then lastly, I launched an app with Rob Pinnell, a training platform for lacrosse. And we've really just kind of dug in over the past few months to try to kind of rebrand things. And it's essentially a startup company, which as a 23-year-old, it's pretty good experience for me to be able to kind of learn the ins and the outs and what to do, and unfortunately a lot of the time what not to do, and it's been a really good experience for me thus far.
Excellent. Well, a lot to get into aside from the questions that I've got that you just mentioned, but if you don't mind, get into how are you preparing for the season? Do you guys have a preseason? What are you doing individually? Question kind of going back to your days playing at Penn State and maybe at Haverford, what have you learned not to do when you're preparing for a season that you've kind of tailored to whether it's getting older, different competition, whatever have you?
Yeah, no, I think we're in a really cool spot in sports right now, because there's such a stress on sports science right now. And that's something that's really fascinated me. Really, it started at Penn State. I really didn't know that a lot of the things about sleep, about nutrition, about recovery, about how to do those things. So that's been a big focus of mine, just talking with some older guys in the league, what they wish they would have done when they were younger. And all of them have said, make sure that their nutrition was in line, their sleep was in line, and that they knew how to recover, and mobility and all of those things. So, that's something that I wish I would have been more aware of when I was younger. I think I would have been probably a better player, because I wouldn't have dealt with soreness, and, I wouldn't have dealt with a lot of the external factors that in a lot of ways are controllable. So, I'm on my workout plan through my college strength coach, Matt Dorn. Him and I, got along really well when I was at school, but also more importantly, I think I saw significant correlation with, my on-field play and what he was allowing us to do in the weight room. And it was, it's just a really good relationship to have with him. And, he's somebody that is very, very devoted to his craft. I get an email from him every morning at about 5 a.m. or what my workout is for the day. So he's really, really dedicated, and I'm really grateful. And then, from the on-field perspective, we just started doing some workouts with the local Philly guys, and Jordan Wolf, Joey Sankey, Tucker Durkin, Will Haas, some guys who are of, it's pretty crazy that I'm working out with them, truthfully, because, those guys I looked up to a lot when I was younger, and still do till this day. So just having the opportunity to train with them and learn from them, and try to be a sponge as much as I can.
Sure. Talk about the app with Rob Pennell. How'd that come about, and what is it?
Yeah, so it's called the Attack Academy app, and it's essentially a training platform that allows both Rob and I to not only post things and drills that we do, but it also allows us to interact with players via Zoom. But also, players are allowed to submit videos of them doing workouts, and we critique them and stuff like that. So Rob was a guy who actually, when I was at Haverford, I really looked up to from an on-field perspective. His resume speaks for itself, and him and I got met when I was a freshman, I believe, in college, through Coach Tambroni, who was my coach at Penn State. And Coach Tambroni was at Cornell, where Rob went to school. So he coached Rob for 2 years, and then made his way down to Happy Valley. And him and I really seemed to kick it off well, and we have great chemistry. And for me, it's a dream come true for me, because I looked up to him, and still really do look up to him, in terms of his on-field ability, and his ability to take over a game. And it's pretty cool, pretty humbling to be on the other side now, as him being, we were texting about 20 minutes ago, one of my good friends and mentors as well. So it's an interesting thing, kind of running it and starting it up by ourselves. But as I said, it's been an incredible learning process for me, that I don't think I would have gotten if I went to a corporate company or something along those lines, because it's a lot of trial and error, and it's a lot of learning.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Figure it out as you go along.
Yeah.
So I want to go back a little bit. Let's rewind back to your Haverford days. Talk about kind of melding the in-classroom along with the on-field experience. I'm not sure if you played other sports at Haverford, but talk about some of the disciplines and some of the kind of character molding experiences you had in the classroom that were transferable over to the lacrosse field or other sports that you played growing up.
Yeah, so I played soccer up through senior year for Coach Brady and Coach Keefe, and I believe Mr. Keefe's on this call. He texted me saying he was going to be on. So I played both of those, and I was extremely passionate for different reasons, I think, for both. Soccer in a lot of ways was a breath of fresh air for me, because it didn't come with the pressure of lacrosse.
Yeah, you can just play, right?
Yeah, exactly. And at times I probably was a little annoying to both Coach Brady and Coach Keefe at practice, but that's okay. I'm sure he's laughing right now as I'm saying that. But I think in terms of classroom, when I look back at Haverford, and I look at the experiences that I had in the actual school, it's very little to do with what I learned. I think is when I look back, it's not going to be, what Dr. Earhart taught me in history class, or, Mr. Collade in English class. It's more along the lines of how the teachers taught, and how passionate that they were about their individual subjects. So I bring up Mr. Keefe, and he's had a pretty big impact on me. He was my advisor, and I never actually had him as a teacher. But he just exuded his passion for English and for that subject. And when we were on the soccer field, he exuded the passion, to teach and to, show his love for the game. And that's when I look at the teachers that I've had and all that have, pretty big impacts on me, the theme of all of them seems to be that all of them were extremely passionate about their jobs. And more importantly, they wanted to share that passion with students. Mm-hmm. And so, for me, being a professional lacrosse player now, my goal is to show how passionate I am, because I love the sport. It's everything to me, but it would be dumb of me not to share that to the next generation of players, to be able to come up and do the same thing that I did, and that kind of started at Haverford. And I think in the classroom, I think Mr. Keefe is a phenomenal example of that in terms of passion, and I look towards my coaches as well while I was there. It's kind of the same thing. They're all just so passionate about what they do. And that goes for every sport at Haverford. I think that's something that's so different, is that they genuinely care, and they genuinely want to see you love the subject, love the game,
Sure.
love it in the way that they do. And looking back on it, I couldn't be more grateful for those opportunities. I kind of wish I appreciated a little bit more in the moment.
Sure.
But it's those types of things that definitely keep me really, really well grounded and well connected.
Good. That's great. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, Jack Welch, the ex-CEO of GE, once said, "Nothing exceptional was ever done without great enthusiasm."
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Broad question. Can go anywhere with it on this one. The Haverford School brotherhood, what does it mean to you?
I think it's something that, one, I'm very proud of, just because some of my best friends are from Haverford. I'm from Doylestown, so I live about an hour from school. And when I went, I didn't really know a lot of people. I knew guys from lacrosse. That was really about it. And I guess, what is it, 6 years since graduation? So 10 years ago, I guess, was when I was a freshman, which is pretty nuts. But I'm looking at it, and I talked to Corey Richards an hour ago. I talked to Jake Hervada for an hour on the phone yesterday. These relationships last, I think, in a different way, because there is just a sense of, when you encompass both the school aspects, the sports aspects, and everything that goes into it. There's so many experiences that you go through with the guys that you graduate with, and there's so many things that you guys, that my class specifically, we had to either battle through or enjoy together. And there were highs and there were lows, and I think because of the fact that there aren't 500 kids in a class. Mine was the biggest class ever, I believe, at 124.
Yeah, I graduated with 82.
Yeah, but because of that, because of how small it is, those experiences become a little bit more intimate and more, have more of an impact on you in the long term. And then finally is that brotherhood can maybe go on pause for a little bit, but the moment that you see each other again, it just gets picked right back up where he left off. I think every Thanksgiving every year, Christmas every year, like, it's always the most fun, because you get to see your boys, and you get to, it's not like you see each other every day anymore. But when you see each other, it might as well have been like that. And I think that's probably the coolest thing for me, is, being able to walk into, any of my friends' places, or pick up the phone and call anybody, and it's just picked up right where we left off, and nothing really changes. And that care never really seems to go away.
I couldn't have said it better myself. So wrapping up the high school side before we kind of move on to Penn State and some of the things that you're most recently doing, and kind of your future and how you see that shaping up. I always like asking this question, especially to some of my either classmates or guys that, especially with the young alumni committee, just trying to get a better feel for, if you could give your high school self one lesson, or maybe a couple lessons, or pieces of advice, because of what you now know, if you could pass it backwards to your high school self at Haverford, for both in the classroom or outside the classroom and on the field, what would it be? Or what would a couple things, or pieces of advice be?
On the field, without a doubt, it's don't wait for your senior year to go all out. I think from a college perspective and a high school perspective, if I could go back and give both ninth grade Grant and freshman year Grant the advice, it would be the same thing. It's don't wait. Don't wait to empty the tank for your senior year. And that's not to say that I didn't work hard, but I look at, my senior year at Penn State and I look at my senior year at Haverford, and both have a decent amount of success, and that was because I unloaded the tank, and I knew that when I was making the decision to come back for a potential sixth year, like I was at ease with the situation because I knew I gave it everything that I had, and that regret definitely is not something that you want. If it went differently my senior year and we weren't able to finish the season undefeated, would I have had regret? And the answer is probably yes. So that's definitely one. And then the other side of it, and I think this is a little bit harder when you're younger, is just gratitude, I think, in general. And it's one thing that, I look back, and every teacher, every person that I interacted with at Haverford always seemed to have the best interest in Grant. And it took a while to appreciate that. But, looking back on it, being thankful doesn't necessarily mean that you have to say thank you to that person every single time. But it's the idea that if that person asks something of you, you're doing it. And I look back now, and Coach Patrone isn't there still, and Coach Nostrand aren't still there. But anytime that those guys text me to do something, it's I'm there, and it's sure. Allowing yourself to be grateful and pay back all that these teachers, coaches, whoever does, because for the majority, and I would say 95% of teachers and coaches, they go the extra mile with everything that you do. And if you need help, they're there for you. So, I would say, don't wait. If you're a young guy, get there and unload everything that you have on every year. And make sure that you're doing it with gratitude. I think that's something that Coach Tambroni taught me at Penn State. And it's something that I really do hold near and dear to my heart for all of those people that helped me get to the place that I get to, that I've gotten to at this point in my playing career.
Great answer. I think a lot of alums would say the exact same thing and give very similar answers. Moving on to post Haverford. Why Penn State? Where else did you look? I think Happy Valley kind of sells itself. I think it's no surprise that their NCAA hockey team has been so good so quickly. But why Penn State?
Yeah. So so we were friends with the hockey guys. So yeah, their facility speaks for itself.
It sure does. The Pakula spent a pretty penny building that thing.
Yeah. So in the subway inside spent about half of my meal points every year. So, so both my parents are alums. My aunt is an alum. My brothers were at the school at the time, and we actually ended up having a year overlapped for my freshman year. So the stars were pretty much aligned. I remember getting some.
Yeah, you were going to Ohio State, put it that way.
Funny story. My brothers threw out the recruiting letters from Coach Myers as well as the Michigan letter also. So I not that I would ever consider going there, but it was definitely the stone was written for me. I think before, but in terms of where I was looking other places, I really only looked in person at Maryland, but I'd been in contact with UNC and Princeton, but Coach Tambroni was really the selling point for me, and he had a lot of similar ways to go about him. And I thought he aligned very well with Coach Nostrand and his style of coaching. And I think he went above and beyond, what my expectation was when I was going into my sophomore year of high school when I committed. My expectation was that I was going to get better and, all this stuff. And now he's a guy that's, essentially a second father figure to me. And he's definitely, he provided a home away from home for me for all 5 years that I was there. And if you get into the room with him and you hear him speak, he's somebody who I don't think I've ever met somebody who's as passionate about the sport of lacrosse as him. And that's part of the reason I think why him and I had such a phenomenal relationship, is because we shared that love. Sure. And it didn't mean that every conversation was great, and it didn't mean that we didn't get in arguments and stuff like that. But, playing for a guy like that was everything that I wanted and more. And then, as you said, combining it with the social life of Penn State and the academic life, football games and everything, there's not much more you need as a 18 to 22-year-old kid. And, I was lucky enough to be able to share that experience with Chris Sabia, who we graduated with. There's actually a picture of me and him right there. So me and him were able to experience it together. And then Johnny Nostrand came into town, and then TJ Malone. Now Matt Costin is also there. So we've got a nice little pipeline, and hopefully we can continue that in the future.
Good deal. Kind of a sports tailored question. This is kind of my sports nerd me coming out. What was the biggest adjustment to the Penn State versus Haverford? Not just from, obviously you're playing against, kind of men in college versus playing against high school boys, but what was the biggest adjustment you had to make, whether it's training, whether it's, I wouldn't say time management, because that's kind of academics and sports. I would say mostly whether it's training, whether it's technical skills, what was the biggest adjustment, or what was the biggest eye opener? Like, whoa, I got to put a lot more time into this.
Yeah. Truthfully, Chris and I look back at it in our freshman year, we were definitely probably the most well-prepared freshmen, because we were in the weight room with Roscoe, and because we played for the program that we did. But as you said, the difference for me is, my matchup in high school, the kid might be like my size, maybe a little bigger. Matchup in college, they're 6'3", 225. So the physical aspect was definitely an adjustment, but I think the mental side of things is where I learned a lot about myself that freshman year. We had an old school strength coach, and he loved to run us. That's for sure. And you learned. I think in high school, I thought I worked hard because I showed up before school, did wall ball, did the Roscoe workouts, did the O'Grady workouts at the time, and I did as much as I could. And I did work hard in some aspects, but learning how to mentally push, I think in a lot of ways, further than you did before, was probably the biggest adjustment that I learned how to do, both from a physical conditioning standpoint, but also, the mental side. There's a lot of stresses and stuff that go into being a college athlete, and you've got to learn how to juggle things and how to push. So I think mentally I learned more than physical in my time, specifically my freshman year. And I think I've learned a little more each year, and
Sure.
I'm 23, so I definitely don't have all of it figured out quite yet, and I don't think I ever will. But that learning curve was definitely the biggest, and we had some great leadership that year, and some seniors that definitely led by example, and that's another thing that definitely inspired me to lead and inspired me to get to that level.
Got it. Good answer. To switch it over to the academic side, how do you feel? What was the biggest adjustment academically or socially that you had to make balancing lacrosse and school life? And how well do you think Haverford prepared you for it? And what were the things that you carried with you from Haverford that really made a difference that you noticed maybe some of your other teammates who went to notable schools themselves just kind of didn't have, that you had an advantage on?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was the time management side of things that was an adjustment. You in the fall, we come in and it's 8-hour weeks, and then it goes to 20-hour weeks. So basically you have a full-time job, when you're there, that on top of a full course load. So it really does, push you in a little bit of a different direction. But I think the biggest thing that Haverford, that I took to Penn State was doing the extra stuff. I think that doing extra, I think Coach Tambroni, always noted with me that, I would stay after practice. I would find extra time to do things because, quite frankly, that's all that I knew. That's how we did things at Haverford, from a academic standpoint, right? If you didn't know what to do in
it's
class,
almost expected in a lot of sense.
exactly. If you don't know what to do in a class, you come in early, you meet with the teacher for an hour, you figure it out, and you go forward. So, learning how to do that extra, both on field, but also, in the classroom, it really was so ingrained in me. And I don't think I even thought twice about it. It was just kind of, that's what the expectation was in high school. And I just kind of continued to carry it over.
Yeah, it's amazing how often I hear, especially talking to recent grads like yourself. I mean, recent within the last, call it 6, 7 years, how often they say the almost the self-awareness of where my weaknesses are, both athletically and more importantly, academically. And back to your point about the teachers and the enthusiasm, they want to show up an hour early. They're there at 5:30 in the morning, 6 in the morning, either catching a quick workout and then they're just tutoring for 2 hours. I think we're very blessed to have that advantage with the educators that we came across. So let's move, unfortunately, to the injury that you had. Walk us through what happened. I'm unfamiliar with the details, but then rising all the way back up to becoming a T. Wharton finals. What was the path like, the journey, stumbles along the way? What was it like? I'm sure it wasn't easy mentally. Give us a quick picture on it.
Yeah, so it was the Tuesday before we played Villanova in the 2018 season. So we played them on Saturday, so it was just a few days before. I was cutting in practice, felt a crack in my foot, and came up limping, finished the practice, which probably wasn't smart, and went in. Doctor did one test on me. It's called the Jones fracture, and I jumped, and he's like, yeah, you're going to get an x-ray. Went and got an x-ray, broken. You can either get in a boot. It's a stress fracture, so it's probably just going to re-break, or we can put a screw in your foot. So decided to put a screw in my foot, and at that point, I actually hadn't redshirted yet. The expectation for me was, I was originally told 4 to 6 weeks, and I was like, all right, let's get under the knife.
And this was during your original senior year, right?
This was during my original junior year.
Okay.
So basically they told me 4 to 6, and I was like, all right, let's go under surgery. Give me the supplements. We're going to do it. And followed all the protocols, was in the weight room as soon as I possibly could, doing conditioning, making sure my heart rate, got up and I was staying in shape. And, as time went on, that crack never really seemed to heal.
Yeah.
So I ended up having to pull the plug on that year, which mentally was pretty tough for me. I actually, unfortunately, I had to go through 5 surgeries in 18 months there. So I went through all that and, battled my way back, and, mentally it was really, really, really hard on me. And there was definitely moments of doubt, and there was moments of am I ever going to be able to do this again?
Sure.
Or, am I going to be able to get back? Is it ever going to heal? And, I just kept pushing, kept keeping my head down. And, we got back in that 2019 season, and, things were going great, and I was playing really well. And I ended up actually tweaking my ankle. I got kind of a reverse ankle in a ground ball drill in practice, and I had to get surgery mid-season then. I was only out for 12 days. It was the high ankles tightrope surgery that a lot of the Alabama guys have. So, my career, for someone who's never been injured ever, literally ever, hamstring injury here and there, concussion here and there, nothing long-term, nothing surgery, to have to go through all of that. And then I ended up breaking my other foot the following fall. So injuries, I think, are an interesting thing with athletes, because they really show how much your sport matters to you, how much that it really defines you in a way. And some people view that as a negative. I just view it as, I love my sport, and I would do anything to be on the field.
Sure.
And it really, I think taught me in a lot of ways, not necessarily a lot about myself, even though I think, indirectly it did because I got through it. But it taught me how to kind of lean on people. And that was something that I think I really didn't do ever in my life before, besides maybe my parents. It taught me how to lean on, my teammates, how to open up to my coaches and say, listen, I'm struggling right now.
Mhm.
And I'm not doing well. And it really allowed me to kind of, one, be comfortable with those feelings and be okay with the fact that I wasn't doing well. Because I think a lot of times with athletes, there's this thought process that you need to be, game face always,
Mhm.
and you don't let your guard down. And I think if I learned anything from it, the number one thing is that it's okay to let your guard down, and that you don't have to go through, major surgery to
Right.
let your guard down. And
Right.
looking back on it at Haverford, I think if there were times when I was really, really stressed, and I think if any teacher or coach is on here, right, the door is always open for
Sure is.
anybody who needs something like that.
Mhm.
And that is something I kind of wish I took advantage of, because it wasn't always easy, but that learning process has been really helpful for me, because I'm able to be more honest with myself, and I'm able to be more honest and more open with those around me, which eventually creates those strong relationships that last a lifetime.
I agree. It's a very good answer. I've talked to a couple good friends who've had very serious injuries in different sports, and it's a common theme that they mention, which is be vulnerable. Like, allow yourself to open up and let people come in and help you, and don't be afraid to ask for help. There's nobody out there whose job it is to make sure that you don't succeed, right?
Yep.
So I think that's a very valuable lesson. So let's fast forward. Draft night. Where were you? What was the experience? How did you find out? Give me the whole, was there 40,000 people on a stage? What was it?
No, so I mean, obviously it was in COVID. So we had a small get together at my house, with a few Haverford classmates that came over, and I kind of knew where I was going just based off of the draft and everything. So it was extremely, exciting for me. Um, I know a lot of people don't know a lot about the PLL and everything like that, but as a kid who uh, that was my goal as a kid, was to be able to play professional lacrosse, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just to play. Like, it wasn't to go number one
Mm-hmm.
overall. And to be able to have that experience with my family around me, and I had my aunt, uncle, and grandparents there as well, and as well as some Haverford classmates, some Penn State classmates, and to be able to have those people around me while that happened was really cool, because I know at the end of the day, like, I wouldn't be here without them. And,
Sure.
it does take a full village of
It does.
people to be able to get that experience. So it was really, really cool. But unfortunately for me, it was kind of just the start. Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't the finish. So I got a call from Marcus Holman, one of our captains, the following day. He's like, listen, man, you're a really good guy. We've gotten to know each other, but that doesn't mean anything. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to work. Like, you've got a target on your back. So you've got to come out and prove to everybody, you're the number one pick for a reason. And we'll help you do it. But at the end of the day, it was just the start. And I was just lucky enough to get drafted into a locker room of guys that really have similar moral values as me, and just care about one another. And I know that those guys really do have my back, and in a lot of ways are big brothers to me. And it's been a really, really positive experience for me, and it's been a really good fresh breath air,
Good.
or breath of fresh air to me, because those guys I know genuinely care, but also the door's always open, and they're just a phone call away. I'll get a random call from a guy who's 35 years old, and that's okay, and we'll talk as if
Mm-hmm.
we're the same age and best friends. So all in all, it was just a really cool experience for me.
That's great. Talk to me about the next couple of years. So lacrosse is kind of I would say, the epicenter of what you're doing, but You're working with Warrior, New Balance. You've got the thing with Rob Pennell. What does your day-to-day look like, and what are kind of the 3 or 4 things that you're driving forward outside of your on-field lacrosse career over the next kind of couple of years?
Yeah. So right now, I think I entered the pro lacrosse world at such an opportunistic time because of the PLL. Just to give a little background, so it was
For folks who don't know on the call, give a little background on who it is, what
launched
it is, who you're playing for.
Yeah, so it was launched 2 years ago. I'm playing for the Archers Lacrosse Club now. Chris Sabia plays for the Water Dogs Lacrosse Club, which Coach Dawson coaches. And so, it really it was, so it's essentially a startup company, but it's really founded on the media side, right?
Mm-hmm.
To grow the notoriety of the sport, because at the end of the day, we all know that lacrosse is not a Big Four, but it can grow. And the fact of the matter is, players weren't getting paid enough in the MLL, the old league, which means that they had to work desk jobs, which means that they weren't able to work out and do stuff for 3-4 hours a day because
Right.
time literally wasn't there. And at the end of the day, they weren't able to put the on-field product out there that they wanted to. But with this new league, compensations are more. Media is more. We have a major TV deal with NBC and NBC Sports that will hopefully switch to Peacock when they get rid of that. So this timing of me coming out of college into this new league that is basically, social media, trying to interact with fans, all of these things, it really was perfect timing for me. And then throw along all that stuff with the new age of social media and endorsement deals. That's also a kind of a big thing that I'm trying to grow. Obviously, you mentioned New Balance, and I was really fortunate for Coach Dawson to allow me to use Sable Field for my first photo shoot with New Balance, which was a really, really cool experience for me.
Comes full circle. I mean, you're doing that a bit.
Exactly. And yeah, so we had pictures on the wall, we had pictures out on the field. It was really, really cool. So there's obviously the on-field side of things, and I'm just trying to be a sponge as much as I can and try to learn from guys who've done it and also learn from their mistakes. But then off the field, it's the endorsement side. So trying my best to make sure that I am easily pitched to a company that wants to work with athletes. Sure. And try to kind of grow that and that portfolio in general. So we got that. I've got the app, and that's kind of, we're also on field. And then at the end of the day, like the looking into my future, the nice thing is I'm basically working for 2 startup companies that have a lot of upside for it. So, the hope is that they take off, but in the meantime, I mentioned that I'm just trying to network as well as I can, and try to, keep the door open and keep experiences open. So that way, when that day comes that I have to hang it up, I'm able to kind of land smoothly and not necessarily have to start at square one. But all in all, I think this has been a really cool learning experience, because it's the first time that I've ever been able to devote myself to the sport. There's no school. I don't really have many distractions. There's no social life right now. So the only thing that we can do, that I can do right now is train as hard as I can, watch film, and learn the sport to the best of my ability. So, there's certain aspects of it, but the forefront and the core of what I do, learning from guys like Paul Rabel and Kyle Harrison, all of those guys have told me the core needs to be your work, your working out, and you putting in the work in the off season to be able to succeed on the field, because that is what's going to drive, something like this, everything else. And if you can take care of it on the field, and be decent on social, which I try to be. It's all new to me. I'm not too comfortable on camera quite yet, but
most people aren't, don't worry.
Yeah. So, just trying to learn the tricks and the trades. And, I think it's really, really enjoyable for me, because I've been able to just be a sponge and try just do whatever I wanted with it. And, I think lacrosse is a cool community because you've got a lot of guys that are willing to help one another, and, very similar to Haverford. And, I'm really, really lucky that I'm in the position that I'm in, playing for the Archers and playing in the PLL.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great answer. So last question to close it out or loosen it up a little bit. What's your favorite show? What are you watching right now? What are you streaming? Any good recommendations for the crowd?
I'm not a big TV show guy. I like rewatching a lot of shows. So in quarantine, obviously The Office was a big one that everybody should watch if they haven't. And Entourage is a huge one.
Near and dear to my heart.
Yeah. So and they obviously just launched a podcast, Victory the Podcast, which I really enjoy. So that stuff. And I'm not really one to kind of dive into new shows, because a lot of the time at the end of the night I'm very, very tired. And so I'll probably just throw on, after this, I'll probably throw on Entourage or The Office and head to bed. But I love the docu-series that I think has come from quarantine, with both the Jordan, the Tiger, all of those things. I've really taken a lot of time. One of my biggest interests with streaming, it's not necessarily an episode, but it's, we live in a day where media is everywhere. So I'm able to study Tom Brady. I'm able to study, LeBron James. I'm able to study all these guys because it's all the data is out there. And I find all of their careers and their upbringings extremely interesting, because at the end of the day, they started out very similar to how I started out. You born in a normal family and you kind of just build up. And
Sure.
So all sports documentaries around, sport icons and stuff like that really, really grabbed my attention. And, I've watched the Tiger thing, I think 2 or 3 times, and Jordan documentary. I actually watched it while I was out in the tournament. It gave me a little extra motivation each game day. I would watch 1 episode per morning. So it was good, but, trying to get the same mentality as that guy, but unfortunately he was built a little different than I am. So
well, listen, I don't know if anybody ever will be.
Yeah.
That's a good way to end it. Listen, Grant, this has been awesome. We really appreciate you coming on. I think everybody on here, both student, younger, older alums, can take something away from your comments, experiences, and we wish you nothing but the best, man. Best of luck, and I hope to get out and watch you play one day.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it.
All right, you got it, Bales. I'll throw it back to you.
Thank you very much. Again, I appreciate it. And I made the mistake of not introducing Thomas Lindberg in the beginning of this. Thomas serves on our Alumni Executive Council. He's also the chair of our Young Alumni Committee, and he does incredible work with our grads and alums that are first 15 years out. So thank you, Thomas. This was awesome. Grant, I appreciate your time. We do have 2 more coming up. The next one will be February 24th. But as we cut this in the last few minutes, the one question I do have for Morgan Young, class 2008, Grant, how did you navigate your decision to not return to PSU for 1 more year? After having so much success in turning college lacrosse on its head, what factors did you consider as you weighed possibly passing up an opportunity for a Tewaaraton or national championship?
Yeah. One, what's up, Moyo? As we talked about with my injuries, 5 surgeries in 18 months, right foot, right ankle, left foot, and then infection with the left foot and 2 more surgeries due to infection. So mentally, I was pretty much drained as could be. And truthfully, I was probably playing at a 60-75% clip in that 2020 season anyway. But as I was talking about a little bit earlier, I knew that I emptied the tank and I gave it everything that I had. And myself and 3 other 5th years, in Brandon Stern, Tommy Wright, and Kevin Hill, we all had a redshirt year, all went through injury, and we all kind of came up with the decision together, because we'd been through so much together. We were injured together. We lived together. We've gone through so many experiences, and at the end of the day, we just looked at each other and said, listen, one, we left this place way better than we found it in 2015. But two, we don't have any regrets. Like we emptied the tank and gave it everything, every single thing we had. And at the end of the day, it doesn't always work out. And people ask, what if Penn State wins the national championship this year? I will be the first one running onto the field and hugging, Folds and O'Keefe and all those guys, and TJ Malone. And, it would be unbelievable for me, because I think that, once Penn State separates themselves in a lot of ways, because when you graduate, your jersey doesn't get put on ever again, but you're still a total member of the team. And that's something that Coach Stambroni really, really instated. We call it teammates for life. And, I truly feel that. And I feel a true connection to the team because of that. And I feel that, no matter what time of day it is, anything like that, I can call any one of the coaches and, they'd pick up, they'd do whatever I needed to be done, to help me out. So I think I knew that it wasn't an end. It was kind of, an end of a chapter, but it's the start of a new one. And I knew that, we just scheduled a weekend to go back on for the Maryland game on February 27th. We don't know if we're going to be in, but if we're allowed to stand outside, we'll be freezing our rear ends off outside and be hooting and hollering for the guys. So, it was definitely a tough decision, but at the end of the day, doing it with guys that I really cared about, and also having the support of my teammates, both ways, made it pretty easy for me.
Well, thank you very much. On behalf of the whole entire Alumni Association, we really do appreciate you taking the time to meet with us and share a lot of your insights. It's just fascinating. And I love the brotherhood of Haverford School men, and you guys should both showcase yourself very, very well. So I look forward to the next time I get to see you. Best of luck this upcoming season, and thank you all for joining.
Awesome. Go get him, Grant. Rooting for you.
Thanks, Vales. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks,
Take
guys.
care.